Please let us know who you are and where you're coming from. Say hello to each other. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Hope you guys are having a beautiful day so far, and we just welcome you for coming. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Employment with our expert, Dr. Susan McGurk. My name is Lisa Kristanak and I'll be your moderator today. And our lovely Amanda Lowe will be our tech support behind the scenes. We always appreciate her. Today's event is funded by NIDILRR, which is the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. This webinar is not a presentation, but rather an interactive question and answer period. For the next hour, Dr. Susan McGurk will respond to any questions you have related to the webinar's topic, which our topic is today, Thinking Skills for Work, Advancing Employment Success Through Cognitive Remediation. I'm going to introduce Dr. Susan and give her time to expand on our topic. Then we will take questions. Please put your questions in the chat. So let's get started. We are honored to be joined by Dr. Susan McGurk, a nationally recognized expert whose work has transformed the way we understand and support cognitive functioning in individuals with serious mental illnesses. Dr. McGurk is a professor in the Department of Occupational Therapy and Psychological and Brain Sciences at Boston University and a leading researcher at the Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation. A clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist by training, her work has focused on the vital connection between cognitive and real-world success in employment, education, and independent living. Along with Dr. Kim Mueser, Dr. McGurk co-developed the Thinking Skills for Work, TSW, program, a comprehensive cognitive remediation approach designed to improve thinking abilities and competitive work outcomes for individuals receiving supported employment or other vocational rehabilitation services. Her research has been funded by prestigious organizations such as the National Institute of Mental Health, NIDILRR, and the New York State Office of Mental Health. She is the recipient of the Gerard Hogarty Award for Excellence in Schizophrenia Research and the Rehabilitation Practitioner of Distinction Award from the National Rehabilitation Association. We are so thrilled to have her here today to join and share her insight on thinking skills for work and the impact of cognitive support on employment outcomes. So welcome, Dr. McGurk. Please take the stage and share your thoughts and ideas with us.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate your wonderful introduction, and also I appreciate the invitation. Are my slides showing?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. So welcome, everyone, and I really appreciate you being here to learn a little more about cognitive remediation for people with mental health conditions, and of course to ask questions about any aspect of my brief presentation and about cognitive remediation in general. So the outline of my talk will first describe the role of cognitive functioning in work, briefly describe what cognitive remediation is. I will give an overview of an example of a cognitive remediation program. It's one I developed with Kim Mueser called the Thinking Skills for Work. Briefly present the empirical support for this cognitive enhancement intervention, and expand a little more on cognitive self-management strategies, which is an aspect of cognitive remediation and one that is both practical and effective. So cognition and work. So what is cognition? Cognition includes mental activities such as the ability to pay attention and to focus on one thing at a time, which is certainly very challenging in the current environment of having so much to pay attention to. with social media and all of our devices, et cetera. So the art of paying attention is something we really want to keep in mind and have some focus about in our own lives. Processing speed, an example of processing speed is answering a question, say during a job interview, in a reasonable amount of time, or picking something out of a vending machine, learning a memory. And this, of course, is, these are broad areas involving learning new information and retaining it over an extended period of time in order to use it. And executive functions. And these include capacities such as planning ahead, solving problems, abstract thinking. So why does cognitive functioning matter for work? Well, there's a substantial empirical support showing that people who have cognitive difficulties, and these are unfortunately common in people with mental health conditions, particularly serious mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, and they impede people's work functioning and achieving the goal of work. And vocational rehabilitation and work outcomes are really paramount in my research program for the past 20 years. And cognitive difficulties are barriers to people achieving the work that they want and maintaining it. So how might problems with thinking skills show up, for example, on the job? Well, sometimes people are slow at completing tasks, or they make mistakes, and there are other compromises in quality of work. Someone may forget the steps of a task when a problem presents itself, and especially an unexpected problem. One might solve it in a very poor fashion such that it creates more problems. Some people, cognitive difficulties cause fatigue because it takes more energy to solve a problem if you have a cognitive difficulty in the area of problem solving than someone who doesn't, and lower stamina. And, you know, of course, we've recognized stamina issues in people who have brain injuries, but have not really fully recognized that that is also the case in people who have cognitive impairments due to other problems. There's lateness, absenteeism, and disorganization on the job. I also want to make the point that sometimes people misconstrue these issues as a lack of motivation or some other problem or a clinical symptom, and miss the fact that these problems might be caused by a cognitive issue, and therefore do not attempt to solve it in a way that would really help the person. So, speaking of solutions to cognitive problems, what is cognitive remediation? Well, I've been involved in an international group of researchers since 2005, the Cognitive Remediation Therapy Expert Working Group, or CREW. And our definition of what cognitive remediation has remained relatively stable through the years of our compiling research and addressing this particular set of interventions. Largely, the definition is that cognitive remediation targets the broad range of cognition and cognitive deficits: attention, memory, all those that I mentioned, plus social cognition and metacognition, using scientific principles of learning, with efforts to transfer these gains to community functioning, because within the definition of cognitive remediation is that the ultimate goal of this intervention is to improve functioning. So we are using cognitive strategies to help someone improve or achieve their recovery goal. Relatively recently, a group of us published a study to evaluate research findings to identify the active ingredients in cognitive remediation. This field has expanded wildly in the past 20 years. And there's all kinds of programs. But there seems to be a set of core ingredients that may be very important in facilitating an improvement. These include some kind of cognitive practice, such as software programs providing exercises to practice the broad range of cognition, with facilitation by a trained facilitator. In our program, we call that person a cognitive specialist. It must involve some sort of teaching of strategies, either during the practice of an exercise, for example, or in the community. And this last point is a tricky one. I'm going to expand on it. Efforts to transfer cognitive gains. Well, there is one aspect, there's one specific kind of effort that is the most potent way to facilitate improvements from cognitive remediation to the community, and that is psychiatric rehabilitation or psychosocial rehabilitation. They're used interchangeably. So what I'm showing is the results of 3 meta-analyses. The first one we did showing this moderation effect. Wykes and Vita have replicated it. And what is it I'm showing? Well, if you have someone in a cognitive remediation program who has the goal of work, they are much more likely to work if they are engaged in psychosocial rehabilitation while they're receiving cognitive remediation, as opposed to the gray bars, which show cognitive remediation alone. So cognitive remediation improves cognition at about a medium effect size, around 0.5. But if it's delivered alone in a standalone program where someone is practicing exercises, whether a facilitator is there or not, you're much, much less likely to see community impact or impact on community functioning than if there is rehabilitation on board that is servicing the person's goal. So, so it means that psychosocial rehabilitation moderates the effect of cognitive remediation on community functioning. And why is that? Well, you're helping the person improve their learning. All aspects of psychosocial rehabilitation, social skills training, vocational rehabilitation involves learning. If you are enhancing the person's ability to learn, they're going to profit much more from the psychosocial rehabilitation. So their combination simultaneously has the biggest impact on the person's ability to transfer those effects to the community. I want to point out one thing on with these Vita bars. This is actually quite interesting. The red bar is psychosocial rehab combined with CogRem, almost a medium effect on functioning. The gray bar are all other efforts to transfer. So that means talking about the person's goal or having more real world kind of practice on your computer. It doesn't matter. It does not work as well as psychosocial rehabilitation. And again, this is a moderation effect we published in 2007, and it's been replicated in much larger meta-analyses than ours. So thinking skills for work. This is, I'm going to tell you about it because we created it and it's been highly effective, but also as an example of what cognitive remediation is and what it can do. Our goal in this program is to improve cognition. It's a cognitive program, so of course we're targeting cognition, but we're also endeavoring to improve a person's confidence and reduce negative thinking, because someone who has problems with confidence, as often happens with people we work with, they may say things like, I'll never get hired, no one, I'll get fired, I can't work, I can't be like other workers, you name it. People have espoused these negative self-beliefs, and we target those. And the reason we do is someone who has more confidence in their abilities, including cognitive abilities, is going to have more motivation to engage with the vocational specialist, for example, and get out there and keep trying. We also, we have 2 co-primary outcomes, cognition, but also work. So our goal is to optimize someone's getting and keeping the competitive job that they want. So these are the components of thinking skills for work. You may notice they look a lot like the core ingredients we identified in the Bowie et al. Article in 2019. We included these back in 2002 when we developed thinking skills for work. We thought that cognitive practice was important with a facilitator who is trained in the area of cognitive remediation. We also thought self-management strategies are important, and I will describe these in a minute. And also, as I already noted, for those who have work goals, integration of the cognitive intervention with vocational rehabilitation. So the cognitive specialist, who's the trained facilitator, is responsible for the program delivery, is trained in cognitive remediation, participates in employment meetings, and has the cognitive expertise of the vocational team. And they can be an employment specialist. So the components in thinking skills for work include enrollment and orientation to the program. We do a client interview as an assessment and additional aspects if possible, interviewing the family, just to understand the person's strengths and weaknesses in their daily life and in their search and performance of work. Computer cognitive training is a core component along with teaching cognitive self-management strategies. Then we do job search planning based on the job they're interested in having and job support consultation. And the planning's important because that's where we learn, we, the cognitive specialist, the vocational specialist, the client, what might have gone wrong in the past, likely from cognitive issues, so we can put strategies in place on the job to prevent those issues from happening again. I just wanted to take a moment to give you an idea of a cognitive remediation exercise. This is called Labyrinths. We have used the CogPack software. It's available, it's commercially available. We have no financial involvement. We purchase it when we need it for a study or a clinical application. The goal of this exercise is to exit the maze, avoiding dead ends. So I'll ask you to put in the chat, and I'll come back to this at the end, what cognitive skill you think this task is practicing. So when, as an example of another solution that someone did, the cognitive specialist may do a print screen and then sit with the client and ask them to point out where their strategy may have failed them, meaning they entered a dead end and had to back out. And this strategy coaching is really important because on top of that, they're teaching the client a strategy to have a more efficient solution the next time they encounter this task. And I kind of, the cat's out of the bag, it's planning. But I am curious what people put in there because sometimes it's a variety of skills, and you're all, whatever you put, I'm sure there's a component of that in this task. So I said I'd say more about self-management strategies. The primary focus of these in thinking skills for work is, of course, work, and we use them to help the person with the job search and job performance. We have a manualized curriculum that addresses 10 specific topics. Each topic has a participant handout. The handout has prompt, checklists, and ways to individualize how someone views their performance in a particular area, like attention, for example. There are aspects in the handout and in the teaching of these strategies that include psychoeducational, motivational, and cognitive behavioral teaching methods. And these are coordinated sometimes with the employment specialist who facilitates their use. We've also had families use them for activities of living at home. They're not just useful for work. This is an example of a self-management strategy. It's called a memory spot, and you may use one. We asked in our groups, we asked participants to identify if they use it and bring a picture in of it or develop one. This is where you put everything when you come in the door that you don't need in your house and that you want to find quickly when you leave the house or the apartment. Keys, work ID, etc. And it prevents you from having to run around the house to try to find these items, which may cause someone to be late. So it over time, with the incorporation into a routine, it obviates the need for memory and reduces attacks on memory. All of these handouts, these 10 handouts, are included in our Thinking Skills for Work book, called Cognitive Remediation for Successful Employment and Psychiatric Recovery. We have a full training program to train cognitive specialists in thinking skills for work. I'll just briefly show you these, some of the empirical support. We've done many, many trials of thinking skills for work, 7 RCTs. We're actually about to publish the 8th one. I also want you to know that we have done this research in a variety of vocational models, clubhouses, traditional vocational rehabilitation, sheltered work, etc. And obviously the most potent effects are in supported employment, which is the empirically based vocational rehabilitation practice. So in all of our trials, we've randomized people to receive thinking skills for work plus vocational rehab, whatever the model is, compared to vocational rehabilitation alone. Our follow-ups have been up to 3 years, and all of our studies find benefits to both cognition and work. So people who get thinking skills for work and vocational rehab do better in terms of work and cognition than VR alone. We also did a study enrolling people who have failed to benefit high fidelity supported employment. Again, supported employment is the evidence-based practice of vocational rehab, beats every possible model, hands down. Bob Drake, Debbie Becker, Gary Bond, instrumental in developing and testing supported employment. Nothing works better. We know that there's a subgroup of people who fail to receive the full benefits of supported employment. We identified who they were, people who were getting these beautiful services and not responding. And we added thinking skills for work onto it. And we found that in this RCT, in 2 high fidelity programs in New Hampshire and Illinois, people who got thinking skills for work plus supported employment achieved their competitive work outcomes to milestone levels in supported employment compared to people who continued in supported employment alone. And this is the first trial of taking people who fail to benefit from evidence-based psychosocial rehabilitation practices and showing we can improve people's ability to profit from those interventions by adding cognitive enhancement, which seems to me to be the primo use of some of these programs. So next, we got funded by the NIMH for a second R01, and this was to look at what's the active ingredient in thinking skills work. I showed you all the components of it. The 2 primary cognitive components are computer cognitive practice and self-management strategies. And we were thinking, computer training is resource intensive, keeps people inside of a building, requires specialized equipment like a computer and software, and additional training for the cognitive specialist. So we compared the full thinking skills for work, self-management, computer cognitive training, compared to self-management strategies alone, which are low-tech, portable, friendly, community friendly, and we compared those 2 in an RCT. And this is what we found. And we, of course, expected the full thinking skills for work would have superior outcomes. That was our prediction, and we were wrong. What we showed is that computer cognitive training plus self-management strategies does not produce superior outcomes to self-management strategies alone. Both improved cognition and work, and both improved them equally. And that surprised us. And these are our work outcomes in this trial. And you can see the red line is the full thinking skills and the blue is self-management strategies alone, meaning no computer training. Improved both cognition and improved work, and improved it the same as the full program. So this gives us a real leg up on personalized medicine, and also one that is cheaper, has a reach into the community, and it's very practical. So this was comparing the full thinking skills in 2015 to the dismantling full thinking skills. No difference. Populations were very similar in those two studies. And here you can see how much the cognitive self-management or self-management strategies are very similar, identical in their ability to improve work and cognition to the full thinking skills for work. So what are cogs, and then I'll stop talking. So what are cognitive self-management strategies? First, I just wanted to give you a sense of some of the issues people have. And if there are employment specialists on attending today, none of these will surprise you. And in fact, we get some of our examples of what things go wrong on the job from employment specialists. So for example, for attention at work, my mind wanders, I miss instructions, and then I'd have to ask my boss again. And that winds up annoying the boss and undermining their confidence in that worker when someone forgets information right away. The door was locked when I got to work, so I went home. And we know that would be a poor problem-solving strategy as opposed to calling your supervisor and making sure you have that phone number on you, which of course requires planning. Yeah. So self-management strategies in our intervention involves 10 topics. The first 3 address motivation. I said why we think motivation is important. And that is because when one is more confident in their ability to perform tasks and their cognitive abilities, they're much more likely to be engaging with their employment specialist as opposed to blowing off meetings. And the motivation triad topics are understanding how cognitive skills and work are related, recognizing one's personal strengths. This is a very potent topic for people, and challenging negative thinking. 7, focus on adaptive cognitive functioning, improving attention, reducing memory difficulties, developing routines at work and for the job search, planning ahead, solving problems, and improving thinking speed. Okay. So the way the handouts are arranged is there's a goal for each one. And in this one, it's increasing self-efficacy and hope for achieving work goals. And the highlights of this topic are to discuss how awareness of one's strengths can make one feel good about oneself. And they're so readily used in job application and interviews when you're asked by a potential employer, what can you bring to the table for this job? Person's got an answer because now they know all of their personal qualities, their skills, talents, and abilities, and resources. So I will, in the service of time, I will skip these 2, but they're in the book. So examples of strategies for each cognitive area include when the boss gives you a set of instructions, a very smart thing is to repeat them to the boss right away. That way you understood them, and it gives you a chance to repeat them to help you remember them. So now you're saying them and hearing yourself say them, and this is very, very potent. Scheduling rest breaks, that's very important for people who have issues with fatigue. When we're tired, we're not thinking on our feet as well, and sneaking in small rest breaks can be very helpful for that. Organizing our workspace to not be distracted with clutter, repeating back instruction, using memory spots, memory aids for planning ahead, using a scheduler like a calendar. Some people really like those. The cognitive specialist can introduce them and help the person practice using them. A to-do list that prioritizes what work tasks get done first, and problem solving. And there's an array of suggestions in our problem-solving handout, including identifying someone we're comfortable with at work and we're not afraid to ask a question. Sometimes people are intimidated by their bosses, and so will try to solve a problem on their own unsuccessfully because they don't know who to ask other than the person they're afraid of. So it helps if the employment specialist can help them identify someone they're comfortable showing that they don't know something. And thinking speed. Practice really reduces thinking speed. Think of learning to drive a car, how much more efficient you are once you learn. You don't have to think about it anymore. And when you take the need to think out of a routine task, you can do it faster. And practice increases efficiency, and teamwork helps people stay on a speeded task. So, in summary, we know cognitive skills are important for work. Plenty of good research showing that's the case in people with serious mental illnesses and an array of conditions where cognitive deficits are common. Self-management strategies can be incorporated into supported employment services, and a lot more readily than computer cognitive training. We've done both, and we know that to be true. And these strategies help improve cognition and work in individual placement and support, which of course is the evidence-based supported employment model. I want to point out one thing. We didn't realize that using these self-management strategies can improve cognition, but that's what we showed in our study. Other people have showed it too. So systematically using management strategies to optimize our functioning can improve our cognition. We have a comprehensive curriculum of self-management with participant handouts and guidelines for teaching in the Think These Skills for Work program. Thanks very much. I hope I didn't overstay my welcome.
Thank you, Susan. That was amazing. So much information. And while we're waiting for those who have questions to put them in the chat, so we invite you now to put any questions that you have in the chat, and Susan will be monitoring that and answering your questions. So while we're waiting for those to put their questions in the chat, Susan, we did receive some questions beforehand. So we can get started with a few of those while we wait on questions to come from our live audience. So we have a question that asks, they wanted to know what areas of community functioning can the use of self-management strategies help with?
And I think that's a really good question because we have focused on employment. And the reason why we focused on employment is it is the most common rehabilitation goal that people come into services to get help with. And there's so much advantages to employment for our mental health, for our financial situation, that it seemed to us to be the best area to focus our cognitive enhancement efforts on. But these strategies can help an array of community areas of functioning, including school. Obviously, using strategies to help attend to a task, especially when we have limited time, like studying for an exam, can be incredibly helpful. And activities of daily living. In fact, we just published a study using with a research partner of occupational therapists who modified our curriculum to address independent living skills. We showed that the use of thinking skills for living, which is what we call it, improve people's ability to live independently and to be discharged from a higher level of care to a more independent level of care in the community. So these have widespread use. And I bet if I polled people listening, that people could give, and please do, give us examples of a self-management strategy you swear by in your daily life to help you get where you're going in your day. The other thing I wanted to say is to Janine, who said that the maze task addresses or practices visual processing, planning, flexible thinking. That's a beautiful answer. Yes. And yeah, we just go with planning, but you're absolutely right. It's a visual task. You have to process the visual information and think flexibly to get out of the maze as quickly as possible. So bravo for that.
We also, Susan, have a few questions in the chat that have come in, but we also had two come in to the Q&A part of Zoom. So they're pretty, they kind of go together. So I wanted to present those to you, and then I'll pop off and you can handle the chat. So we have a person that wanted to know, is this program covered by Medicaid or Medicare? And how would I find which providers and locations offer cognitive mediation in my area?
Yeah. So the field right now, meaning myself and collaborators and other researchers, are focusing on the issue of scaling up. So we know these set of interventions are helpful for people and have sufficient empirical support to be able to get reimbursed for delivering them and to scale them up much more widely than they're currently available. However, finding someone who is skilled in this area and delivers them is still difficult. We work with agencies who have been able to bill cognitive remediation on different types of code, community functioning, community support codes, CBT codes, which I believe requires a master's level degree and a license as a clinician. In terms of where to find it? So we have, I work with Marianne Farkas on a NIDILRR funded scaling up development study. And we developed training materials and involved national agencies nationally and trained people to be cognitive specialists and then trained a smaller group to train cognitive specialists. And so we have a list of providers that I can, Lisa, maybe give to you and Amanda to send to participants so they can see if there's anyone in their area. Some of the people on the list, and I will highlight who those are, can also deliver thinking skills for work remotely. Lisa?
Yes, we definitely
Sorry.
can. Yeah, if you want.
So I hope, I'm sorry, it's a rather long-winded question. Let me just sum it up. Not widely available. I know nationally who is delivering this program, either within an agency delivering vocational rehabilitation or in some other context, and I can provide that information to people who have attended today.
That'll be great. We can definitely get that out to the folks that attended today for sure, for sure. Okay. Well, those were all the Q&A. So do you want to monitor? We have some questions coming in the chat. Do you see them?
Yes, Zachary. So first, you can email me. I'm sorry you tried to call and no one called you back. It's easier if you want to use my email, and that was on the title slide, and I'm happy to provide a PDF of these slides if people are interested. My email is McGurk, my last name, @bu.edu, MCGURK. And so that's that. And then Zach asked, is this more for mental health, or do we work with people who may have more attention issues from neurological issues? So it's a very good question. These both components, computer cognitive training and self-management strategies, have been applied in people who have attention deficit disorders, who have had brain injuries. So I'm not sure if those cover the neurological issues you're referring to. Certainly these approaches are helpful. In fact, in the history of cognitive remediation, these approaches the computer approaches in particular, but even some of the self-management approaches have been borrowed and adapted from the use in people with brain injuries. So these are not new, but have been modified to address cognitive issues in people with mental health conditions. And then let's see, let me know, Zach, if I didn't answer your question. And Michael, what are the prospects for future improvements in treatment for people with executive function deficit? Well, executive functioning deficits are broad and can be associated with any number of conditions. And, I would say there's lots of programs that address executive function using a variety of methods. And I would say the best fit would be determined by what the actual issues are and what the goals are of that person. So what are their desires functionally? And then we can figure out what would be the best set of strategies that can help that person move towards that area of functioning. Because your question's very broad, so that's the best I can do with it right now. But I believe there probably are a set of strategies that would be helpful, depending on the issue. Haley, what assessments of cognition do I use? I love that question, and I love it for two reasons. One is in the thinking skills for work intervention, we don't use a cognitive assessment per se, because this is largely delivered in the context of vocational rehabilitation, our agencies that deliver that. And as you know, these agencies, these mental health agencies, don't have a full-time neuropsychologist or psychometrist who are trained in cognitive assessment. It's very hard to get that. That's shame on them, I understand. And this is largely due to funding, which is not really their fault. But agencies can refer for a cognitive assessment if there's an indication. Those are often hard to come by. And so we don't impose the need for a formal cognitive assessment. Instead, there's a client interview that's pretty well structured that asks the person how they feel they're doing in each area of cognition, as well as their use of self-management strategies, so we can then build on that in the intervention. And we also ask, when possible and agreeable to the client, we ask family members what they may have noted, and the employment specialist. What strengths does this person bring to the job, and what are their weaknesses? And then we try to, and then we examine what cognitive areas may be contributing to past work problems. And that's an area we also interview about. When was your last job, and what went right and what went wrong? And so we triage that information to have an idea of what cognitive area or areas we need to really pay attention to in the intervention. In my research projects, I use the matrix battery. So for my first NIMH funded study, I started using the matrix, and that was years ago. Prior to that, I used batteries that were developed by of commercially available cognitive tests that were being used to assess the full range of cognitive areas. Let's see. George, I'm not sure Vallejo. I'm not sure I'm saying your name correctly. I am in my internship working with a client who wants to work. He suffered an arteriovenous malformation and now suffers from schizophrenia and paralysis, memory loss, depression, anxiety, and intermittent emotional explosive disorder. Plate used to find what kind of job. Oh, that's clever. Used ONET. Okay. He does hold a master's degree, wow, in math, and I want to help him, but I'm not sure that once he starts working, whether he can continue. Yeah, well, first of all, that's wonderful that you're working with this person, that they have a very specific goal, and that they want to achieve that goal. I would go with that and not be held back by any concerns that you may have about him maintaining the job. It sounds like he would benefit from vocational supports, and vocational supports can provide a variety of services on the job, in prep for the job, etc., that will help discover because it may evolve, what kind of services and supports he needs with your input. Because you clearly have a relationship with this with this client, and your input to the employment specialist would be really critical. So the three of you could work together as a team to, based on the job he wants, then figure out what kind of help he needs to get it and keep it. Your confidence in his ability to reach his goal, I'm sure, is very important to him. Okay, yeah. So, I have to say, George, if you want to write me a little more, I'm maintaining, of course, his confidentiality, and give me more specifics on what some of the symptoms are, what kind of job he's looking for, et cetera. When was the last time he worked? I mean, everything I said that we take a look at, when someone enrolls in our program, in order to direct it for optimal benefit. I can, give you some suggestions. Great. Okay, good. Do reach out. I agree with you, Janine. As long as he has hope and support and perseverance, he can succeed. And there's ingredients to help people have those things. And certainly your relationship with him is very important. Okay. I was just scrolling through to see if there's lots of, wow, Hope is a rehabilitation counselor. That's wonderful. And I'm so glad students are here. And if there's any readings I can advise, just reach out to me by email.
Dr. McGurk, we do have a few other questions that came in beforehand while we're waiting on others who might have questions they want to put in the chat. We do have just a few more minutes. One of the questions, would you give one or two examples of self-management strategies that can help me optimize my everyday functioning?
Oh, those are great. Well, we know from, we have lots of ongoing programs that we consult with, and also a number of studies. And what we get feedback about is, first of all, is in the developing a home routine or a personal routine. Part of that is querying the person's bedtime routine. Does someone have a bedtime or nighttime routine? And also, do they have a morning routine? And often what becomes discovered, and for example, we have an employment specialist doing a group in North Carolina. And what he told me is that a number of people were endorsed the fact that they didn't. And so they, for example, did not have a consistent bedtime, and often stayed up later than they really needed to, given they had to get up early, and then would oversleep an appointment. So that seems like so obvious maybe to some of us. Well, do you have a routine for getting to bed at night? What time do you start getting ready? What steps do you need to get in bed and to go to sleep at a particular time? So it's very concrete, and it turns out is really helpful. When someone has a particular goal, we need to have a consistent routine, and be organized about it. Similarly, for getting up in the morning and getting ready to leave the house, we all have or should have a routine, so that we know how long it takes and we can time it and plan it. Those two aspects of are the overall topic of getting organized at home or having a personal routine turns out to be really impactful on people's lives. Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. Yeah. So, it helps people examine that. Other strategies that people use, I'm going to tell you it's attention. And so often when we ask people what cognitive area, how's your memory? Well, I have a terrible memory. How many times have we all heard that? We've said it. I can't remember names. I can't remember what people just said to me. I forget things. It's all memory. And what we do is push back on that and evaluate attention, because if we didn't pay attention to it, whatever it is, where we put something, what the person's telling us, we're not going to remember it. It's not memory at all. If it doesn't get in the first place, it's certainly not going to stay in. So I think attention is keystone, and it's effortful. And we sometimes scrimp on it. Like we have a practice on one of our exercises in our computer training. Here's a list of shopping items. You get 1 minute to memorize those, and we're going to ask you about them later. Well, after 30, after 10 seconds, someone's like, I got it. I don't need to really pay. I learned it now. So you can take them away and I'll tell you what they are. And it turns out they don't remember them. They might have remembered 3 out of 10 or 2 or less, because that's not attention. Attention is reading each word, thinking about its meaning, maybe categorizing them. And in our daily life, we can use that strategy to be mindful of our attention. So someone told us our name. Well, we may want to repeat the person's name and make an attempt to memorize it either through some trick or strategy based on how someone looked. Well, they said their name is Sandy. Okay, well, that person has sandy brown hair. So that's how I remember their name is Sandy. That takes effort. It's an effortful process. But I can promise you, you're much more likely to remember Sandy's name if you do that. So the more effort up front we put into learning something, remembering something, hearing something, the memory issue falls to the wayside. And there are many things trying to grab our attention, and they're very destructive, I think, to attentional processes, because everything gets 10 seconds or less. Everything gets 10 seconds. So building up our attention model, like concentration, is also, I think, important. But anyway, I'm sorry, I strayed from the question, which is what strategies? Attentional strategies. And being mindful is an attentional strategy.
We're getting close to the time, but we do have several questions. Charlotte wanted to know about if you're putting together more studies, and is there a way for someone to be a part of that study, to be a part of your program for ongoing study?
Yeah, we have in the Boston area, we have an ongoing study on people who have serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia, or major depression, or bipolar disorder, based on the state's definition of meaning functional problems. It's people who are age 50 and older who have an SMI. We're enrolling for studies through Bay Cove Services. So this is a long shot, but if the client is in Massachusetts and receiving services through Bay Cove, which is a pretty large organization, you send me a note and I can tell you how to look into joining that study. You'd have to let me know where you are, and then Charlotte, and then I can consider the answer a little more accurately.
That'll be great. Susan's email is in the chat, so if you didn't catch it, it is in there.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, exactly. And we have several more questions. Do you have advice for flexibility in people with mental illness working with their concrete thinking?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So for someone who might be inflexible, and we don't have to have, a mental illness to be inflexible in our thinking, we can work within that. We can work within those bounds of flexibility and provide people. I'll give you an example. So if someone is starting a job, and we know based on what they've told us and maybe input from family or employment specialists that they're not real good at flexibility and solving a problem or thinking on their feet, what in that case the employment specialist can do is figure out in advance what are the most frequent problems this person will encounter. And this can be, doesn't have to be on the job if that's not, Corrine, if that's not what you're asking, it can be anywhere. We can develop a set of strategies, teach them to the person, have them practice them so that they don't have to be flexible. They have like a bag or a limited set of problem-solving approaches that they know, they practice, and they can use if that particular problem arises. Yeah, so flexibility is not necessary if that approach is used.
Very good. And Corinne
And we
says,
do that a lot. I love it when employment specialists can tell us what problems are most likely going to occur. Then we develop a very limited set of problem-solving strategies to solve the problem without endangering the job.
great question. Here's the last question. Let me scroll back up. From Charlotte, if someone is in outpatient intensive psychotherapy, would this program be additive, or would the client need to successfully graduate from intensive therapy to a more supportive psychotherapy to have enough bandwidth to do your program?
No, no. And, wherever anyone is at, whatever they're involved in, there's no time like the present to think about a very adaptive, easy to use strategies can help us be more successful. And they might even help the person get more out of the intensive psychotherapy that they're in. So improving our attention or using strategies to make sure we're on task, that can help in any situation. Perhaps including that one, their outpatient program. So I don't think it would, depends on how much time someone has. That's the other issue, is intensive treatment may take up all their energy and time right now, so they may practically have to wait, but they would not have to wait in terms of interfering because it actually could be beneficial.
Very good. Very good question. Well, we want to thank everybody for all the wonderful questions, intentional questions. Thank all the students that were able to attend today. Susan is a great professor and speaker as well. But Susan, I love how you just interact, and you're just so personable and approachable. And it's obvious by the questions that were coming and your willingness to have people reach out to you by email. And I'm sure you'll be getting some of those soon. So, and we will also, once this is over with, those things, the slides and other things that we have to send out to folks, we'll be getting those out pretty soon. But we want to thank you, Susan, so much for joining us today and spending this hour with us. And it's been a pleasure to work with you on this. And lots of people are thanking you right now on chat, and we appreciate that. But
thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. And thank you all. I love your questions and appreciate your engagement in this topic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome. And we want to ask everyone, when you log off, you'll get an opportunity to fill out a survey. This is so important to get your feedback so we know how to improve what we're doing right and how we can make these webinars better. So we thank you so much. Thank you, Susan. Thanks to everybody. And we hope to see you next time on our next Ask Me Anything.